light tonight. The subject of potato onions is, there isn't much out there about it. Potato onions used to be quite common. Every little homestead would have some, maybe not every, but a lot of homesteads would have some, and they're easy to grow, and once you've got them, you've got them, but they kind of went away. The railroads came in, grocery stores came, America came west, and agriculture started to become a commodity instead of a life-sustaining thing that everybody had, and the common onion came in. And the common onions are nice and big, and they're uniform, and farmers could grow them and make a profit. And the smaller potato onions just kind of fell out of favor. People stopped growing their own food at home in their own gardens, and potato onions were kind of a casualty. They kind of just went away. And I think that we ought to bring them back. Now, we've got a bunch of people here tonight that are interested in this kind of stuff. So you're just a key group to kind of see what I call a resurrection of potato onions among us today. Like I told you, I could talk for hours, and I hope I don't get off on a tangent and just get going and going and going. But there's something I need to go out on a tangent on to explain to you exactly what's going on. Most people will say, what in the world is a potato onion? That's usually the first thing that I get. I go to work and they say, well, what? You do what? I say, well, potato onion. What in the world is a potato onion? Is it a potato? No, it's not a potato. It's every bit of an onion. It's just called potato onions as near as I can tell. I've heard two explanations, but the most common one is that they're like potatoes. You take a potato, you put it in the ground, and then you get more potatoes. And then if you want more potatoes, you have to save one of those potatoes over the fall and plant it next spring, and then you get more potatoes from planting potatoes. Well, these onions are the same way. They don't normally reproduce from seed. And potatoes can reproduce from seed, but normally we don't reproduce potatoes from seed. These onions are the same way. These onions multiply themselves at the root level. Now that's different than maybe an Egyptian walking onion like you have seen, where it'll send up a stalk and then you get a bunch of other brand new little bulblets on the top. And then you can plant one of those or whatever. These onions do not do this. They multiply from the base. And if you look in the botanical books and some of those things from the Seed Savers Exchange or in plant taxonomy books, these are from the family of Allium, Cepa, Aggregatum. Aggregatum is what they should call them. The walking onions come from the proliferum group. Now, I've not been schooled in any of this. This is just something I picked up over the years and have learned, so I can tell you probably some wrong stuff because I have not been schooled in it. But this is stuff that I have learned just from my own experience. So the potato onions from the Aggregatum group will form the bulb that you plant in the ground will send up 6 or 8 different shoots from the base of the bulb, and then you'll get 6 or 8 onions. So that's the way they multiply themselves. So they're commonly called multiplier onions also. Multiplier onions, sometimes people will throw in the Egyptian walking onions into that same group. So we can start getting some of these differences here, but let's try to keep it simple and just let you know that potato onions multiply that way. You can see here what a nest of potato onions will look like later on in the summer. Once you have planted that bulb in the spring, they will start forming new onions and they will nest out, and that's what they will look like. So, how do I advance this? I guess it's going. This little computer I've got here is just a little $199 computer, so It's kind of slow here. Okay, you can see here that you can get a lot of onions in a small amount of space here. I normally plant these about a foot apart. And here in this double row, I have, might get some feedback. Do I need to put this in my pocket down here maybe? Don't know if that'll help or not. So you can get hundreds of onions in just a small amount of space. Yeah?
For each one of those nests, you have to put an onion bulb. Is that right?
For each nest, I put one onion bulb.
So there's like 6 or 8 members.
Yes, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then further on down. Yeah, so I put in, for just that picture, I put in 8 bulbs. To end up with maybe 48 or 50 or... Oh, the green thing. How fun. This is all new to me. This PowerPoint I put together is my second PowerPoint I've ever made my whole life. So, yeah, you can grow yourself a lot of onions, and these onions, I brought 4 of them here, so they're not necessarily. That's about as big as they'll get. So if you can picture in just 8 or 10 feet a row getting 48 of these, that's pretty productive. Let's see. Maybe I need to tell you at this point about onions, the common onions. Normally, onions are not a real popular garden crop. One of the reasons I feel for that isn't that a lot of people don't like to eat them or whatever, but because they aren't that easy to grow. An onion grown from seed normally will take, 120 days to get you a nice big bulb. And that means, starting them in February underneath grow lights and then putting them out into the garden and then growing them all summer and then harvesting them in the fall for one big onion. And that's a lot of work. So how do you get that onion the next year if you want to be sustainable? Do you, if you want to eat it, then it's gone. How do you start that next onion the next year? You got to buy another seed from somewhere. Where does the seeds come from? Well, onions are biennials. In order to get seeds, you've got to, once you grow your onion from a seed, that onion needs to go dormant, wait the winter, and then the next spring it'll send up a seed stalk, and then you will get seeds. It takes two growing seasons for an onion to get seeds. And so if you're into self-sufficiency or something, you've got to plant a seed, grow your onion, save your onion all winter long, plant it back out, and then have it send up seeds in the second year. And when it sends up seeds, that bulb becomes inedible and you can't eat it, and all you get is another seed. And so, commercial farmers can do this. They want to sell you those onions. But it's just not that easy if you do it on a self-reliance type method in your own home. Another way that you can grow your own onions is to plant a little set. Maybe you buy these at the IFA, yeah, I was going to say a farm store or something. But, a lot of people don't see a lot of savings in time and effort and money to buy an onion, to plant it, to grow it bigger, and then you buy an onion to get an onion. I mean, what's that all about? Usually when you plant a set, that little set is in its second year. It's already grown from a seed to a small set, then it's been stored by some commercial grower and then sold to you in the farm store as a little set. It's in its second year, and it's going to want to send up seeds. In that second year, you find the little set, put it in the ground. It wants to send up a seed stalk. As soon as the seed stalk comes up, you better eat that onion, or else it becomes inedible almost, because the seeds start to suck energy from your little set, your little whatever. And so people go, well, gee, onions are they're done paying. I'm not going to grow. I'll just buy them from the store. Another way that's become very popular in the last few years is to, thank you. I'm selling you use this computer, so it wants to do all kinds of updates now that I'm wanting to use it here again. Is that you can go to, I know that a lot of the, like Lowe's Garden Center, I work with a lot of the Lowe's in the area, and they will sell an onion transplant. So just like you buy a tomato transplant, you can buy an onion transplant. So you planted a seed way early in the year and sold you a, you know, a little onion seedling. Now these aren't big enough to sell yet, but they would be in here in a few weeks. But so that you can actually put a transplant out that's in its first year of growth, and it's going to make you a nice big onion. So if you wanted to grow onions yourself, it's kind of a, you've got some decisions to make. Are they really worth it? Maybe I should just buy them from the store. That's not what potato onions are all about. Once you get potato onions going, you've got them forever. They're easy, they're a cinch, and they're hardy. They grow well here, and it's, you know, you really can't fail doing it. I saw a hand back here.
How do you recommend starting the seed?
Well, I need to go into that because there's a bunch of seeds floating around here now, and but I don't want to do that right now. Don't let me forget, because the seeds need to be started way early in the house. These potato onions are a little like right now, or a week ago. So right now. Yeah, they need to be put in the group. They need to be germinated immediately. They really do, and I'll tell you why a little bit later. Yeah.
Explain about the days of maturity is much better.
Well, yeah, we need to talk about that too, because starting these from seed is a whole other ballgame. Once you get the potato onions yourself, then it's easy. Starting it from seed, we're gonna, if you really want to be successful in doing that, you're gonna have to go through a bunch more hoops here that normal people are not willing to go through. And I will try to explain that here. We need to, I hope some of these questions will answer themselves as I move along here. Because the potato onions really went kind of rare. And some of them, as far as I'm concerned, that advanced. Maybe I need to do that. There we go. The potato onions, the common consensus on the internet, and there's not that much on the internet to be read about potato onions. It's just not out there. The common consensus was that back in the 1800s, in the old gardening books, when they did talk about potato onions, talked about at least 3 different kinds of potato onions. White ones, yellow ones, and red ones. And common consensus was that the red and the white ones have gone extinct and they exist no more. They're gone. Only the yellow ones are left. So here about 15 or so years ago, and I didn't document any of this back at the time, I wish I had now, was I was able to come across some yellow potato onions. And these potato onions that I got, the yellow ones, got them from Ronager seed potatoes years ago. I think they're still in business, but I don't know if they, anyway, there's only a few places to get potato onions commercially. They describe them as thumb size. These things aren't very big. And when they got sent to me, they weren't very big, but I planted them in the ground. They grew well. They multiplied out. I always had them. They stored forever. And I always had them. Never was without them. They just became just a staple of my house. My assistant here. But I thought they were pretty cool. They filled a niche, because in the middle of the winter, when I needed an onion, I'd get 2 or 3 of these little onions and I would cook with them or whatever. And always just had them and thought they were neat. But one year, I had something interesting happen to me. And I decided to find out if they were winter hardy in my mountain valley in Mountain Green up in Morgan County. I planted some in a front garden bed, a flower bed, in the fall to see if they would survive the winter. Well, they did, Next spring they started to grow, and that next spring I also planted my other potato onions in my normal garden, and they of course grew too. But the ones in the front yard all had seed heads all of a sudden. I had grown these potato onions for a decade, never seen a flower on them ever. And all these in the front yard flowered. The ones in the backyard in the good vegetable garden that was watered and fertilized and good soil, they never sent up a blossom. So I thought, wow, that's weird. I've got two sets of potato onions, one in the front, one in the back. These got seeds, and these don't. What's going on? And so, being a member of the Seed Savers Exchange already for years and years, I took some of the seeds and saved them and thought, I'm going to play with them and see if I can grow potato onions from seed. I'd never heard of such a thing, you know. I never even was on the internet back in those days, so I didn't know. I planted these seeds and found out that all of a sudden a whole new world opened up to me. That's what these seeds out that you've got here. So this is kind of the, if you really want to do what I've done here, and I invite you to try, I really do, because this is part of resurrecting the potato onions here, is that I planted 2 rows that year that I started from seed. I planted a row of seedlings and a row of my normal potato onions that I had cloned out for already a decade. And planted them side by side so I could watch them. The one row, I had tall ones, I had short ones, I had dark green ones, I had blue green ones, I had a bunch of different stuff. I just could not figure out what in the world was going on. And none of these seedlings produced a nest of potato onions like I was used to. I only had one. Each seedling gave me one bulb. Some of them had a double bulb. These aren't even the same. They're not even the same. What in the heck is going on? But these, after the normal old ones that nested out, I had a bunch more thumb-sized onions, potato onions. But in the other row, I started getting these great big onions from seed. Great big ones. I thought, well, will they store for a year like the other ones store for a year? I mean, I could put them in my basement in the dark, and they'd store for 12 months easy. And I wonder if these big ones would store. If that's the case, I can fall plant and get seeds every year and get these nice big storage potato onions. And so I thought, well, what the heck? I can play with it anyway. And so I saved some of these great big giant onions. The following year, well, in fact, I talked to Jerry Goodspeed, who is the extension agent in Weaver County. He says, what have I got going on? He says, God, man, I don't even know what a potato onion is. He said, you're on your own. So I thought, well, maybe they'll store. I'm going to store them in the basement and see if they store. Well, you know what? Most of them store pretty well. So I thought, well, now what do I do? So here again, the second year, I planted these great big giant bulbs in the ground the second year, next to my old-fashioned little tiny thumb-sized potato onions. And then all of a sudden, what I saw happen was these great big giant onions started to nest out and give me a bunch of potato onions. And then the light went on, I thought, aha, now I know what's going on. Onions are a biennial. They need 2 years to do their thing. So if I plant a seed, I get a bulb. Second year, I plant that bulb, I get potato onions. And that was just the coolest thing for me because I had all of these different types of potato onions that were totally new from what I'd grown for a decade. And I had yellow ones, and I had whitish ones, I had straw-colored ones, I had ones that had huge nests, and others that had maybe only 4 or 5. And I thought, wow, what do I do? So I started selecting them out and growing them year after year. And I ended up with a type of potato onion that was, I couldn't get any of my potato onions to be small anymore. They were all big, they were huge. They were all this size and not thumb-sized. And I thought, well, why is that? Am I cool? Did I? Well, come to find out, a theory I got out on the internet, and I got university professors and everything kind of back me up on this, and no one tells me I'm wrong, but potato onions, like potatoes in Idaho when you grow them, you know what? If you save a potato, plant it next year, it harbors diseases from soil-borne diseases year after year, and it makes your next year's crop less and less and smaller and smaller. And so potato farmers in Idaho have to clean the viruses from the potato stalk every single year. So when you go to the farm store and buy potato seed, what they call seed, seed potatoes, it'll say on there, certified disease-free. Well, my assumption is that potato onions are the same way. That if I've got potato onions that have been cloned for 100 years, that they're probably full of diseases. And that's why they're thumb-sized. If I get a seed and start over from seed, I've cleaned them all up. And this is the size that potato onions ought to be. You won't find this size potato onions anywhere else in the world. Unless they came from me. And I've sent them all over the world already. So I'm convinced that that's the case. And if someone would want to get some lab equipment and try to check for viruses and whatnot, I think my theory would prove itself out. But now, to continue on with this a little bit, I had all different kinds of potato onions. And I thought, this is so cool. I ought to document. I ought to start finally documenting some of this. So that if someone else wanted to reproduce what I had done, they would be able to do it themselves. That's what I hope you guys can do. And I wrote up a little paper, this was years ago, and put it on the internet, and lo and behold, all kinds of people started emailing me back. And I'm like, oh, they find it on the internet. The internet's a cool thing. And anyway, so I tried to get more seeds and was unsuccessful. And you really ought to read some of this on my book that I've got on the internet. I'll tell you how to find it here in a minute. But well, let me tell you how to get to it here, just because I kind of lost my train of thought here. There are big corporations, the Walmarts of the world, or Ford, or whatever. They pay big money, huge money, to make sure that if someone types in television sets in a Google search, that Walmart's going to come up first on that first page. So that you'll go, oh, well, Walmart has some TVs for sale. I wonder what they cost, Well, since there's so little to be read about potato onions on the internet, I have done nothing, but I find myself not only on the first page of a Google search, but I'm number 2, the number 2 result on a Google search. You type in potato onions, you'll see me there. It'll say booklet all about potato onions. So if you type in potato onions, then I'll be either number 2 or number 3. Type in potato onions. Last I checked today, I was number 3. Seed Savers Exchange is number 1. Southern Exposure Seed Exchange is number 2. And I'm number 3. But if you put potato onions in quotation marks, I am number 2. So that's how you can find me real easy. So instead of giving you a great big whole long website address.
We'll have a link on the Utah Seed Exchange website as well.
Yeah, go there. Don't go to Google search.
Right
Go to
now,
Utah.
it's there.
Go to Utah Seed Exchange and find me. But read that book, and that will give you a lot of hints as to these seeds and what you're up against. Because if you plant these seeds, and you need to plant them right away, because in their first year of growth, they're going to act just like any other onion for you. They're going to need a long growing season. In fact, you won't get that onion to go its full life cycle until like end of September. So you'll end up with nice big onions. You'll be tempted to eat them. You might want to eat some of the ones that aren't looking so good, and they'll taste perfectly fine. They'll taste just like an onion. But save some of those big bulbs. Find you a nice, cool, dark spot. Maybe if you've got a room that you use down in the basement where you store some of your canned items or something, put your potato onions down there. Save them for the following spring, which will be in, 2015. Put them back in the ground, and you will have potato onions that look like like the pictures that I showed you here.
Okay,
And
well, when you plant those, you don't put them under the ground, right?
I have put them into the ground and leave the top barely exposed is what I do.
And then it'll kind of nest out.
It will, and as they nest out, it doesn't matter how deep you plant them, it really doesn't. You can put them deep. Well, if you put them too deep, might not come up. Or you can just, I've seen people put them right on the top with just the roots in. But when they start nesting out, they push the soil aside and they kind of float to the surface anyway. So it doesn't matter whether you start deeper or less deep, they still end up laying on the top of the ground for you. Got a question back there?
So have you tried leaving them in the ground in the winter and covering them with leaves or?
Yes, I have. And that is a possibility also. I need to address that subject just a little bit. But to continue on before I forget about where I was at, is that once you start seeing all the different traits that are out there to be found in this gene pool, you will find the white ones that went extinct and the red ones that went extinct and the yellow ones, you'll end up with those colors back again. They're there. You just have to get the plant to sexually be able to express its genes. Same way that when you have children, one might have blonde hair and the next one's going to come along with brown hair. Well, what do you mean? You start with the same two parents and you've got these different traits. That's what's going to happen with the potato onions. Once you find one that does well in your area, in your soil, in your latitude, and it's a color that you want, or that start selecting those out. Once you do that, you can asexually clone those for year after year after year after year. You have just created yourself a new variety of potato onions that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. Because they're like snowflakes. Once the genes get combined, it's like you. Your face doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. Kind of looks like the face next to you, but there's a lot of differences there. That's the way your potato onions will be. Now, I missed a question over here.
What kind of soil does it have? What kind of soil, or what do we have to do to it to?
No, the type of soil doesn't matter, but it does. Because to get potato onions this big, they've got to have the right nutrients. So you can do it in a container with potting soil, but you've got to make sure that you give it all the fertilizer and sunlight and every moisture that it needs. Because a plant's a plant. It's going to still need everything depending on the type of soil. Well, let's see. Some varieties might do better in potting soil, and some varieties might do better in clay, and some varieties might do better in sand. I don't know. That's something that is out there to be found. Once you start playing with the genes and you find one that does better here, you need I can't do all that research myself. So
quick question. Yeah, a lot of people showed up a little bit late, and so I'm wondering, maybe you've already covered it, but to start to finish, so there's a bunch of pods over there. What do you do to get the seed? And we've got about 4 minutes. If you would mind just recap, start to finish, from that table to eating stuff. Yeah, 2 years later, just bam. Recap.
Okay, take a seed. You plant it in
So they're in these little pods. You actually squeeze the little pod down off the seed.
Yeah, let's see if we can. Okay, we've got sexual reproduction going on here, and they sent up a seed stalk. Now this is important here because the seed stalk on a normal onion comes out of the bulb itself, but on a potato onion it comes from the base. So you can go ahead and eat the onion as well as harvest the seeds. Okay, now what we've got here is we've got a seed head, an umbel is what they call it, and once these dry out, there can be anywhere from 1 to 6 seeds inside each one of these little things. So you need to, some of the seeds will just be little black specks and they're not going to sprout on you. But if you got a good onion seed in there, once you squeeze these seed heads apart and separate the chaff, you can plant those and they will sprout pretty well on you. This batch of seeds here that I've got, the germination rate is about 80% from my experience of growing these. These were grown from seeds that you guys have collected here.
At what point do they then transplant those?
Okay, you will grow these until you can safely put them out in the garden. So, middle of April, something like that. They can take some frost. Frost won't hurt them. hard frost probably would set them back some, but you're going to treat these just like a normal onion seedling. That's what you're going to do. So
But then that's going to grow into one large onion.
this will grow into one large
Keep
onion.
over winter, replant next year, and then it will next.
That's right. It's a biennial. You're gonna need to replant the ones that you got. Got a question?
So my keeping onions to plant next year, you talked about the tops and the roots, so can we just pull them up and leave them exactly as they are and store them that way?
Yeah. Yeah. You'll need to. All of this is written in my booklet. If you want to go read it, it's about 60 pages long or so, and there's other stuff to read in there. So you're talking 75 pages of information that you can read there.
So Kelly,
Yeah.
the third year then you leave one in the ground, harvest and leave one in the ground.
Yeah. Then you've got a bunch to eat. Save yourself some planting stock for the following year. Eat the rest. Yeah. That's what will happen the third year. Yeah. You can eat some of your failures once at a time. You know, I don't want any more white ones. I want the red ones. And so you can eat the white ones the second year if you want, or whatever. So
Is there a special way of drying them or you know, some people say not?
that's written in my booklet also. Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind repeat the question, somebody, so everybody can hear.
Oh, to store these once you get them from the ground, they do need to be dry. The necks of the onions need to be dried out so to make them store longer so they don't rot and get moldy. So yes, I let them die right down in the garden, and then once I harvest them out, I put them on a screen, like an old sliding door screen, in my garage so they don't get rained on and they don't get the morning dew and that kind of stuff. That'll dry them out. Then I put them in the basement in the dark, and they'll store really well.
How do you start the seeds? I mean, you put it in potting soil?
Well, potting soil isn't the best. You need a seed starting mix. It's a little bit different than potting soil. Potting soil is nice and heavy and black. The seed starting mix is a lot lighter. That'll allow the seedling to emerge a lot easier. So
Is one seed in each cup?
ideally, yes. But you can put 3 or 4 in because you're going to pull them out and transplant them anyway. Let's see. I really need, oh boy, I'm out of time here. But I really need to introduce a theory to you here. I've got one more slide after this. Potato onions, I told you, do not normally go to seed. For me to get them to go to seed was just totally a fluke thing. But I have found out through much research and study that if you start a potato onion from seed, it will be really happy to send up more seeds in the second year, really happy to send up more seeds in the third year. You know, the first 10 years it's going to give you seeds every year, but that characteristic starts to diminish to the point where after 10 years they're not sending up as many seed heads anymore, and after 20 years they're not going to send up seeds on you anymore. After cloning them for 20 years, you're not only starting to accumulate diseases, but the tendency to set seeds is going to be almost gone. So once you get these potato onions cloned for 100 years, they're not going to send seed on you anymore. Unless you somehow trick them or nature somehow tells that plant, hey, you need to send up a seed head, which happened to me that very first year. And so my next theory that I need to introduce, I'll get to you. Just keep waving your hand here a minute. This is, let's see, I'll let you read that for a minute. Because I guess I have one more slide. I have got another theory here that everyone, this is about heirloom stuff, that, you know, every 20 years or so with potato onions, we need to start over from seed again, the same way a potato farmer in Idaho needs to start over every year. I feel that if you think that, okay, I'm going to buy these old heirloom varieties, well, some of them have already gone extinct. Well, I'm going to take that yellow one, those little thumb-sized ones, and I'm going to keep that going into the future because it's an heirloom. Well, you know what? We're doing ourselves a disservice. I think we need to have heirlooms developed today for our children's generation. And that's what we need to be doing with potato onions in the world today. I think that, you know, kind of at the ending of my thing here, I'm hoping that can recognize the process that needs to be taken in order to keep potato onions popular and easy to grow for future generations.